You can hear me now, right? Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. I didn't know where you pulled this biography. So I will not talk about my hobbies, even though now you know more about me than I thought you would, or we could exchange later. Yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here. Even though I work for Nest Hong Kong, I don't live there. I travel every once in a while, but I work in Berlin, in Germany, from where we cover, let's say, the European markets, 8 countries to support companies going international. And as our dear moderator said, I worked in FDI or international foreign trade for quite a while, consulting background. So it's my sincere pleasure to be here today, to kind of set the stage about what's happening actually in the world, and it's quite a lot. So we could talk about a lot of details here, and I know I just have a couple of minutes, so I want to keep it short and focus only on a few points. But as Patrick said, a lot of stuff has happened over the last month, and let's say a lot has changed after January 20th. And when you look at the news, stuff is happening actually every hour, more or less. It's crazy, and I think we've never lived in such fast-paced environment ever. We've been through, disruptions in economies. We've all been through COVID, pandemic, with huge supply chain issues. The AI revolution is happening. We're on the brink of moving from large language models and AI systems into AI agents, which have completely different capabilities, but nonetheless, what's happening right now, I think, is pretty unique. So I would talk about a few things related to trade and investments, especially in that space, US related, which unfortunately affects all of us more or less. So a few things that I might not be correct in a few minutes from now. But before I start talking about the actual figures and the actual effects, I want to make one thing straight, and that is we all understand what an import tariff is, because some people in DC don't know what it is. So the import tariff, it's like the term of the hour, is a levy that's put on a product that's shipped from one country to another country, and the country that receives the product has to pay for it. Not the country, but the company, the importer of that product, has to pay it when the product arrives at the border. So when you buy, let's say, a ton of steel from China and bring it to Czech Republic, you pay the company in China for the steel. It's the same price. You just pay for it. But the moment it arrives, your own government gets the import tariff from you. And then you can decide if you want to pass on that tariff to your own customers, or you bear it yourself in your own production operations. It's not the other country that pays for it. So what we see right now is that the US put a 25% tariff on everything that comes from Mexico and Canada this week, which is massive. And the reason behind that, we can debate, whatever the motivation is. It's really about fentanyl production, and it's about the opioid epidemic in the US, which is bad. But I'm not sure if really this import tariff will really make a difference for the people on the streets in the United States. However, that's the message, that's the narrative, and we cannot ignore that. And also putting this measure with this narrative into perspective, I don't want to give you a very simple example, very simple calculation. I know we don't live in a static world, and the economists around you will butcher me for this, but let's just assume the import tariff will kick in 25% on all imports coming from Canada, Mexico, and China. So it means we talk about a volume of $1.4 trillion in imports to the US. 25% of that is the import revenue the US government makes, by the way. In a static world, that would be $350 billion in extra revenue for the government of the United States, which is actually significant. It's not what China or what Mexico, whatever other country pays. They actually collect this money from their own companies and even from their own citizens, because they have to pay the price in a static world. Okay, of course there will be changes in prices and adjustments. And we just talked with my colleague here about M&A activity that might happen in the US because of that to avoid this extra levy. But nonetheless, let's keep that in mind, what the real motivation might be. So Mexico was very hesitant in reacting to this tariff because for them it actually makes a big difference. 80% of exports from Mexico go to the US. Even a small fraction of that, when it breaks down, has massive effects on the economy. However, for China, it's a little bit different. I don't know if you see it in the news, but China's reaction is very moderate so far. Why? 2 reasons. One, exports from China, or only 15% of exports from China go to the United States. 85% go to any other country. So they are not that much affected in terms of relative share of their exports. And on the other hand side, China has massive problems domestically right now. Well, they have a crippling economy. The real estate market is down. There's an unemployment problem, especially among younger people in China. And again, domestic consumption, which is the backbone of the Chinese economy, is not really picking up. So in an authoritarian system like China, where the Communist Party promised the people growth and prosperity, in exchange for loyalty, if that dream breaks down, that's a much bigger issue, than an import tariff from the United States in relative terms. So, even though I work for the government of Hong Kong, and politically, of course, Hong Kong is China, this is not, there's not a secret. It's not debatable. So, no worries. That might be in the Okay, so now I wanted to pull this quote here because it actually, makes it very clear what the change in the whole situation around countries nowadays is. So governments will continue to, and that's the new thing, blend national security priorities with strategic competitiveness goals using the instruments that they already did. Industrial policy, which for instance meets incentives for investments, subsidies for investments, and trade protection with import tax, for instance. So that is a completely different dynamic that we've not seen at that level in the past. And we have to figure out actually how that will translate into global trade flows and investment flows. Just a quick note on the global scale. I don't want to talk about the US all the time. So let's look at the forecast of where economic growth is supposed to happen actually over the next few years. Because that will also show you a little bit in which direction companies might look, where they want to be engaged in, which markets they might want to enter. So on the left-hand side, you see US, Canada, and Europe. And you see the growth figures. I mean, they're recovering a little bit after COVID, but still, it's not very impressive. If you look on the right-hand side, emerging economies, Asia is still extremely strong. And the figures are really high. When you look at India, kind of settling in at 7% growth rate year on year, it's massive. China's growth rate is going down, but still significantly higher what we see in the West. ASEAN, a huge market now working together around the 10 countries in the region, have a very strong growth rate as well, and the MENA region is catching up as well. So, still, the European economy is strong and the US economy is big and very important. But if you look at the growth markets, we have to look east. I don't have much time, so I will skip this a little bit. My expertise lies in FDI. So I want to talk a little bit about foreign direct investments here, which sectors are mostly focused on by companies. But we don't have too much time for that. I'd rather want to point out the role of China. It's not about promoting China. It's about painting a realistic picture of China because the role is changing. China used to be the manufacturing powerhouse in the world, and we'd like to sell to the Chinese economy because it's a huge market. The difference is China is exporting technology and skills and expertise now to our markets, to Europe and to the United States. And that's what a lot of people around the world have not really understood. Because Yeah, it's a complete mindset shift, but we see that it's happening, and that's why also a lot of protectionist measures against China are happening, because they see it as a threat. On the other hand side, I'd like to argue, let's see where we can cooperate, because we have to eventually. So, I work for the Hong Kong government. Some of you have ever been to Hong Kong. You can approach me during this day if you like to know more. Hong Kong is a pretty neutral place, can be the gateway to Asia and bridge this cultural and also these economic, gaps that are happening right now. Thank you so much.